our brains can handle incremental. It's almost like you have to make the change so incremental that it flies under the radar of your resistance. It flies under the radar of your subconscious, because what happens if you make the change too big, like you haven't been working out at all, and all of a sudden you're going to work out 5 days a week for an hour each time kind of thing. And the subconscious will derail that because it's too big a chunk all at once.
Friends and neighbors, welcome to this hot-ish take from Abby Research. If you are here because you are fans of our dear guest, Marie Elizabeth, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Dr. Kristen.
My name is Dr. Erin.
And we are the good doctors of Abby Research who are obsessed with cultivating curiosity because it's the only thing that changes the world. And so we have lots of conversations on this channel that are all about how do we see the world a little bit differently. And today is absolutely no exception. Like I already referenced our esteemed guest, Marie Elizabeth Malley, who you may or may not have already met on this channel. She gave me the privilege of a welcome to my world conversation earlier in the year. And I will link, we will actually, Eleanor, let's be honest, Eleanor will do all of the incredible work of linking all of Marie Elizabeth's incredible work in the show notes so you can kind of get to know her. But as Marie Elizabeth and I were talking, during her Welcome to My World interview, I discovered that she and Dr. Erin have something deeply in common, which is that neither one of them cares for the concept of New Year's resolutions. And because we're talking to you in January, we know you're getting a ton of messages right now about making your resolutions. It's the icebreaker question. It's a terrible icebreaker question, but people ask it all the time. You're getting lots of adverts to come back to the gym. You're kind of getting inundated. And so we wanted to give you a potentially opposing viewpoint in this hot-ish take. So Marie Elizabeth, how do you feel about New Year's resolutions?
I think they're a crock of shit because there's this idea that somehow magically at the turn of the year, you're going to have the motivation to do your life completely differently. And somehow the willpower, which I want to talk about in a minute, just the notion of willpower, but somehow your willpower is magically going to be on your side and work for you and have you be able to make these changes, massive changes in your life that you somehow haven't managed to make all year long.
And I think it's so important that you bring up like the scope of the change, because they're not small changes that are marketed to people as resolutions.
That's right.
And that's one of the problems I have with them, is that it's like, we're some big asks, and it's a massive setup to failure. And I know before we started filming, we talked about this a little bit, but that's the other thing that upsets me about them, is that, you know, we're asking you to make this big change. We're putting all this pressure on you that, like, because it's a new year, you have to be a better version or a different version or a healthier version of yourself. And if you don't do it within like so much culturally specified time, like, you're a bad person, you're a failure, you're not healthy, you're making bad choices. And there's so much cultural judgment that comes with it that's not really conducive to like holistic change. Like, if we're asking people to like really think about themselves, which is important, it's a constant process. Like, why are we being so judgy about it?
And why do we put so much pressure? I mean, I love the idea of turning over a new leaf.
Sure.
So in theory, it could be great. You could, but pick one thing, maybe, and make it small and incremental, because the way brains work is they like homeostasis. They like to continue on the familiar track. So then when you press your brain with this pressure, that we have to change our diet. We have to change our exercise habits. We're going to start sleeping. We're going to be nice to our spouse. All these things at the same time. What happens on the brain level is like, whoa, 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 this is what? Too much change all at once. And it will sabotage you, not because it's malevolent and not on your side, but just because you bit off more than your brain could chew. What do you say about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. We talk a lot about that shaming changes behaviors, but not motivation. And so that's
Amen.
a huge thing that hits me with this, is that so much of the narrative around, I love also turning over a new leaf, turning the page, and I do it both at a new year. And then for me also, I do it at like different seasons. So
Yes.
I have a practice of kind of I do it quarterly because I was raised in a business family. So we've always thought in financial quarters. So I do it quarterly, where I think I kind of evaluate, am I proud of who I was this quarter? And what about me was I proud of? What about me would I like to work on? And I kind of do it a lot. And I'm a huge symbolism person. So is Erin. We both study symbols. We love symbols. We understand the importance of symbols. So we don't want to tell people to ignore the symbolism or significance of a new year.
Absolutely.
But you cannot be shamed into changing who you are. No matter what anyone tries to do, it just doesn't work that way. Like, because you're actually going to constantly crave the stasis. Yeah.
And that's that's so fascinating to me that you brought in brain chemistry, because I don't think, and I'm sure you would agree, we don't talk about this enough. And the impact that it has. And obviously marketing tools are geared to be successful because they're marketing gyms, diets, smoothie machines, what have you, but, something. But for me too, it's this idea that if we do this, that like it becomes a permanent state of like, oh, I will fix this problem that I have. And we don't think about things as an ongoing process.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And we don't give ourselves, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about like how that works, in the brain. We don't give ourselves the space to fail, the space to evolve and change. And it's not like we don't give ourselves the space to be imperfect either. And like one of my go-to phrases is always like, I'm an imperfect person. Like if something happens and I screw up or I don't get it right or whatever, I'm an imperfect person. Like it's a process. I'm a yoga practitioner, so I use the language of practice. And like, you never get there. It's never a finished progress. I'm never done practicing yoga. I'm never a yogi. It's constantly showing up every day. And for my brain, the way it works, and I process information and myself, that's so much more helpful to me and takes so much more pressure off. That's why I'm like, why don't you just want to like see how you do every day and go from there, instead of like, by March 15th, I have to lose 25 pounds or whatever,
Yes.
So I don't know this disconnect between why goal setting is helpful, and like it is for a lot of people, and why it has to be this like fixed point. Sorry, that was a lot of verbal spewing at you.
No, it's beautiful. I don't apologize, because I was, we're so in sync, because I was about to bring up practice, and so thank you for bringing that in. And I really believe approaching things as a practice, approaching change as a practice. And our brains can handle incremental. It's almost like you have to make the change so incremental that it flies under the radar of your resistance. It flies under the radar of your subconscious, because what happens if you make the change too big, like you haven't been working out at all, and all of a sudden you're going to work out 5 days a week for an hour each time, kind of thing. And the subconscious will derail that because it's too big a chunk all at once. So I'm a fan of the practice, basically, of tiny habits, like tiny incremental changes. So it's like, okay, I want to eventually be able to do a pull-up, which I've never in my life been able to do. Even when I was totally ripped and very strong, I still couldn't do a pull-up. So this is a dicey example, because who knows if I'll ever get there. But for example, let's say I want to be able to do a pull-up or even 5 pull-ups someday. Yeah. Well, you start with just hanging on the bar, not even pulling up, but just hanging and maybe doing a little incremental. You just engage your shoulder blades. That's it. Day 1. right? And maybe you do that for a few days, and then maybe you get one of those elastic bands that sort of helps pull you up kind of thing, and you do it assisted, or you get a friend to assist you and you do it assisted for a while, and then but it's incremental so that your strength is building along with the reps. You're not just trying to do things too fast, too hard, because that will lead to injury. And injury is often your subconscious saying, slow down.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring, this might be a derailment, but this is my curiosity at the moment. So you talked about the subconscious kind of protecting us from big things. Is that the same process when we go through a trauma, that it like freezes our brain from processing it for a little while because that's an overwhelm, it's too big and we can't control things anymore?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I wanted to bring in about willpower, because willpower is in a conversation with this whole process, right? So when we try to do things from willpower, it's a finite resource. I like to say willpower is a finite resource and will always fail. It just will. You get tired, if you're denying yourself certain things. Let's say, to go back to your example, Erin, it's like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds by March or whatever. So you start denying yourself a bunch of stuff. At some point, your willpower will get exhausted. And that part of you that wants to eat the thing or wants to binge or wants to, whatever your particular, what's the word?
Is, yeah.
Yeah, your particular thing, your particular way to go around the boundary that you set with yourself is, your willpower will fail and you'll do that. And then the thing to do when your willpower fails and you do something you wish you hadn't done is not to beat yourself up and shame yourself into trying to get back on track, as we call it.
Yeah.
It's to recognize, oh, wow, look at that. My willpower got exhausted. I did the thing that I've been trying not to do. Let me just start again. You just start again without all the noise in your head and self-recrimination and all of that. You just begin again.
Yeah.
And as my business coach calls it, she talks about in business that you're iterating your way to awesome all the time. And I approach, my growth and relationship growth, since that's my domain, relationships primarily, in that way. Like, you iterate your way to awesome. You try something, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. If it didn't work, how do you iterate? Try it again. Did it work? Not work. Iterate, try again. It's just, that's how, and through these constant iterations, like tacking a sailboat, right? According to the wind, a sailboat doesn't go straight to shore. You have to tack according to the current and the wind, and you make these incremental tacks all the time. And eventually you get to shore, you get where you want to go, but it's not a straight line ever.
Yeah. And that's so important, because as you were talking, I was thinking about this idea of iteration and the way that we frame resolutions around an end goal as if it's a line from point A to point B, and how inflexible that is. It doesn't allow for movement. It doesn't allow for, like, one of the things that I've learned through my yoga practice is, like, my body is different on different days. I don't sleep well. I've had an argument with someone. I'm stressed about something. I walked, 10 miles through an airport or whatever. And so I can't show up to my practice that day thinking my body is the same as it was the day before, because it never is.
Nope.
And so, like, that's why smaller changes, I think, are more beneficial, because they give you that flexibility, and you're not on this, like, linear progression towards your end goal. Because then if you feel like you're on that linear progression, like you said, you don't leave space for a day where it doesn't work.
Right.
And, like, we frame doesn't working as failure, or like, oh, I ate that bowl of ice cream when I went out to dinner with my family, and now I won't meet my goal for tomorrow. Like, so what? You change your goal. You can move it. You do what is best for your body on a given day. And I love your idea of iterations, because it means we can evolve as we're changing and making these decisions, which is so important. But another thing that
it's a meeting, like you're meeting yourself each day, as opposed to imposing something on yourself, which often is coming from the outside, like some cultural or familial standard that you're imposing on yourself and trying to meet. Versus actually being in relationship to yourself with the curiosity, because that's one of my favorite things as well. It's like meeting yourself with curiosity. Okay, I have this desire, by March to feel different and lose weight. How do I feel about that today? What supports that today? How do I be both kind to myself and also disciplined at the same time, but not imposing discipline at the expense of kindness?
Yeah, it's a conversation. And there has to be space for grace in that conversation for yourself, because as you so accurately pointed out, like, we don't respond to that kind of stress and pressure very well. And so much of what we talk about when we talk about self-care is this, like, the marketing of it and the industrial complex of self-care that is always selling you the latest diet and the latest craze. And we talk about it, but we don't say enough in society that, like, the goal of these things is always to make money. So they're always selling you something.
Totally.
So I think a lot of people are genuinely concerned and want to help people and think that their method is useful and helpful, but they're also trying to make money. So, like, use a little bit of discretion. Don't.
Yeah, I like to say, like, you can't buy self-care in a bath bomb. Like, it's just like, because, sure, you can take a bath and use the bath bomb, but if you're still an asshole to yourself the other 23 hours of the day, like, what have you actually done? Nothing.
You've taken
what have you done?
Yeah.
So self-compassion is actually, to me, the highest form of self-care. And I don't mean indulgence, right? I don't mean just letting yourself sit on the couch and not do anything if you have a desire to do something. But I mean being compassionate with yourself as an imperfect being, as he said so beautifully, to that, I want to go from here to there. I understand it's a winding road. How do I keep moving forward at the pace that my brain will allow and not derail? And also understand that stuff will happen. There are going to be days where I don't feel good or I don't feel motivated. And how do I be kind to myself in that spot, but not lose too much ground,
I'm still stuck on the idea that willpower isn't a renewable isn't a like
it's a finite resource.
It's a finite resource.
Yeah.
Because that is 0% what I was taught growing up. Like, I think, and this was especially, I mean, so much of my formative years was spent in evangelicalism, and all of that was based on the idea that if you're not this thing that we say you should be, it's because you don't have enough willpower. You don't have enough discipline. You don't have enough, like, if you're not this thing, it is your fault. And so
it's some baggage. She comes by it honestly.
I have some baggage. And so I'm sitting here thinking, I mean, I'm literally singing.
But what's your experience? I mean, what's your lived experience?
Had, like, camp songs we made the kids sing about the importance of willpower, like all of these kind of things. So I'm wondering too, my sociologist brain is kicking in, like, when did we become obsessed with willpower? And my guess is it's something around World War II.
Yeah, you say, interesting.
I think it's something around World War II. But, and then moving in, and then once we hit the 80s, it was like run amok. Like that's kind of when everything got, but we got really obsessed with the idea of the perfect American in World War II. And willpower is a lot about perfection and a lot about presentation of self. And so I don't know the answer to this, viewers, but you can guarantee I am now on a deep dive to figure out when we all got obsessed with willpower, because I've been singing these like 5 or 6 songs in my head that if I had friends with me that grew up in the same vacation Bible schools, they could all sing the same ones. And I know I can tell you the theological, why we do it theologically, but I'm much more interested in the why do we do it socially, and why did we give into it in that way? Because I've definitely, I mean, the way I think of drill sergeants and the military, they don't they say that when we idolize that, Goldman Sachs believes that willpower is an infinite resource. Like, we've built capitalism on the fact that willpower is an infinite resource.
I have to bring in masculine, feminine dynamics here.
I was actually going to ask you
Yeah.
Yes.
So, because I think in a culture that is so skewed toward masculine principles,
Yeah.
which I'm not down on the masculine. We all, every single one of us, no matter the gender of your body, has an inner masculine side and an inner feminine side. But as a culture, we have skewed so heavily toward masculine values of production, focus, direction. It's the drill sergeant, run amok.
Yeah.
And when you don't allow space for feeling, for connection, for meeting yourself on any given day and actually tracking how you're feeling and responding to that, you don't allow space for receptivity, for receiving yourself each day, receiving how you feel and then working with it. So there's the optimal mix of your focus and direction and single pointedness with that inchoate, that sort of like feeling, non-direction, just feeling kind of part of you. When those two are not playing well together is when we get this dominance of emphasis on willpower and direction and focus and shaming of those days where you just need to be a blob and not do anything because you just don't have the motivation.
I'm like having a whole therapy session over here. Like
for real though.
Yeah. And I think
it's huge.
It's massive. And I think what you just said also connects to something you said that connected in my brain about this idea of like the way that we work around our boundaries that we've set for ourselves, or that we find a way to, fall back. I would use the phrase like fall back on established patterns. And like, I'm keep referencing my yoga practice, y'all, because I'm a yoga nut. But
it's legit.
It's taught me so much because I've learned so much about the patterns that my body is in, how I hold myself, what muscles I use, all that kind of stuff. It's really hard to unlearn and retrain.
Yes.
And so I think that's the same about emotional patterns and psychological patterns. All of that stuff, depending on how long we've had it, going back to vacation Bible school or further, like the more we've repeated those patterns, the harder it is to unlearn. And then I think about the stress of saying, I have to unlearn, or I have to change this pattern by this time. And I have to do it in a big way because my family's telling me, because my gym is telling me, push so much pressure that it's not sustainable. And like you said, like the willpower runs out, and then we've built a culture of shame around it where you're set up again for this failure. But I don't think we talk about like how hard it is to change patterns, physical, emotional, behavioral. And if we did that,
we don't talk enough about that.
No, and because that's not like what our society is founded on, that's not what capitalism is founded on here. But like for me, that's the thing where I'm just like, but it's hard, y'all. Like, I've been learning for the last year and a half how to not bend my knees by hyperextending. Like, and I still do it all. Like, it's hard. Give yourself some time to do it. Like,
it takes a while to repattern. It's as so the well-worn grooves of the brain. We have the patterns are like, well, there's two. Let's see, which metaphor do I want to use? Okay, train track. Let's use the train track. So it's the train is used to going down that track, willpower, right? Let's use that as the example. So then you're going to you decide, oh, I'm not going to shame myself. I'm not going to use shame as a weapon anymore against myself. I'm not going to try to willpower my way through this. I'm going to find what my actual desire is and listen to that. That's like when there's a splitter on the track, right? And instead of having the train go down this track, you need to turn that lever so it goes down the other track. That's how trains change direction, right? And go different places. Well, the brain is not unlike that. And you have to find what the lever is that will flip your train to the other track, for one, but also have compassion that some days your train is going to be down the old track way like a mile before you even realize that that happened. And then it's, oh, whoops, I went down the regular track. Let me just come back, take a moment, remember that, oh, I want this other track where I feel my desire, listen to it, be curious about it, take a small incremental action, because this isn't all shit we do in our heads. We actually, action is what makes change. You can think change till the cows come home, but until you actually take a different action, it's not happening. So all of that, you bring yourself back, you remember, oh yes, I'm wanting to go down this other track, and this is the action that helps me go down that track. And you just take an action in that direction. And that's how you begin to build a stronger connection. The lever becomes easier to switch to the new track. And over time, it's not like the old track disappears, but what happens over time is the neurons that take you to the new track fire more readily. And the ones that take you down the old track start to fire less loudly or readily. So it becomes easier to choose the new track. And over time, that becomes your new normal. But this doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in January just because you want it to. And it's an active practice of choosing over and over again the new track, and noticing and being kind to yourself when you've gone down the old track. And you just bring yourself back and iterate and start again.
I think that's a beautiful place actually to hit pause on this conversation, which I know we will keep having offline. And if any of the viewers would like us to keep having it online, please let us know. Comment below with questions, whether you're listening to this on the podcast or you're watching this on the YouTube channel. There's lots of ways to get in touch with all three of us. If you are also a survivor of the Willpower is the Only Way, let me know so I don't feel so alone as I begin to process all of this.
Oh, you are not alone.
You're so not alone.
Like champion self-beater upper here and willpower queen. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
I've learned the hard way.
We're all going to keep wrestling through this together. If you've got a question specifically around this that you'd like us to tackle, a particular piece of this, the three of us really like talking to each other, and we're happy to do it to help you. So Marie Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. Amazing.
It's been wonderful. I love talking with both of you. You're just so brilliant and amazing. And thank you for having me.
Oh gosh, we love a mutual admiration society over here. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do the YouTube-y things. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, ding the bell. If you're listening on the podcast, wherever you are listening, please follow the pod, rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It really, really does help. All of us that ask you for this aren't just doing it for our health. I swear to God, it really, we all live and die by algorithms these days. So do us a solid and help us master the ones that master us. In the meantime, from the three of us to you, our deep hope for you is that you can have compassion for yourself as you find that new train track, as you iterate towards the version of yourself you'd like to be in whatever section that is. And that no matter how loud the voices outside or inside your head are that say you're not doing it quick enough, that you would remember that those are not truth. And those don't know what's going on, that the decisions and the practice that you're showing up to do every day is truth. And may we always chase truth. Thanks again to Marie Elizabeth. I'm Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.